So, yeah, turns out facial hair isn't a cure-all for ugly. So, what I'm going to talk about today is either going to make you feel more comfortable or less comfortable, depending on your position in life and what you want out of your career. Now, hopefully, this will all be comforting to everyone in some way. But let's get started with, the first thing. So when you're in school, it can be really intimidating because it's easy to look around you, especially in technology, and look at all the amazing things that have come to be in a relatively short period of time. And it's easy to look at those things and think that you have to live up to those expectations. And I'm talking about things like YouTube here, right? Where if you're going into something like web development, you may look at something like YouTube and think, I could never do that. This is so big, so complicated, there's so much to it. If you were to somehow get an eye into the code, it would probably be completely overwhelming to you. And this can be the same for things like operating systems, right? Where they're very complicated. Really nobody understands any one operating system fully. And it's easy to think, how in the world could I ever, get in there when the best I can do is these little projects that I'm doing in school? Well, the thing to realize about that is that you are going to be part of a small, small thing when you go into industry. And that may be a comforting thing for you if you're in college, or it could be discomforting. If you are the person thinking, I am going to make the next YouTube or the next really big website all on my own and I will totally get the credit for it, not going to happen. Unless you're working at a startup or something, in which case it could potentially happen. Even then, it wouldn't be all you. You'd be a somewhat big part of it. But if you're going into industry, let's say you're going to go work for the government, or you're going to work for a tech company, or you're going to work for just any normal company. The truth is you're going to be a really small player in that company. Now, that's not to say that you can't actually, take something from that and feel proud of what you've done. But you should realize that it can be really small. Now let's talk about the other perspective. So when you're first starting in your career, this could take you off guard, that you expect to really have to live up to something big, something that you feel like you can't achieve. And that may be based on your experiences in school, where you're seeing big things in the industrial world and you're seeing the little projects that you're capable of making. But what may surprise you, at least what surprised me, is after I got out of college and went into the workforce, I found myself to be much more capable than I estimated I would be in comparison to, my peers that were in the workforce for a lot longer than me. And, I eventually figured out that the reason that I was somewhat competent next to them is because, we are all very specialized and we all have specialized skills, some skills that I had that they didn't. So I could kind of look like a genius even as a, new developer. And it can kind of go the other way too. That when you're first starting and you're not given big things to do, sometimes that can be a bit disconcerting to you because you might think to yourself, oh, I'm not being put in the place that's going to be the big deal, right? If that's what you want. If you want to be part of, a program that sends a spacecraft into space and it does something, and you're not on that team when you start, you might feel bad about that. You may feel like you've been selected to be the underling. And this is something that you'll need to get past and hopefully not think about too much when you're starting, because the thing you have to realize is your career is very long. If you start right out of college, at 20, at your age, you're probably not going to be able to retire until 70 if you are ever able to retire. That's a long time. In fact, that's more time than you've experienced in life so far. So it can be difficult to picture that when you're starting out. It's easy to think of your life relatively when it comes to time and not realize that the time you're going to spend in this environment is much longer than that. So that's something that you have to keep in mind when you're in this position. What about a little further in? So what about when you've been working a little bit longer? This is where things can really become problematic if you haven't really gotten to understand this yet. And I'd say to a degree, this sort of happened with me. That you move on, you keep working, years go by, year after year, and you start to think, I'm really not accomplishing anything. I'm not making an impact either at the company I'm at or in the world in general. And it's easy to think, I have to do something. I have to change what I'm doing because I should be doing way bigger things than I'm doing now. Now, not everybody has this feeling. In fact, I'd say it's quite the minority of people, but I happen to fall into that group. Now, here is what I want you to think about when you have those thoughts. Imagine asking your supervisor, or telling your supervisor that this is what you want. You want to do bigger things. I think a logical question they may have is, well, like what? Like what? Like what bigger things would you want to do? They obviously only have domain over, whatever they have domain over, whether that be your group or section or department or whatever you call it, and it could be higher up too, but even then, the best it can be is the organization or company itself. And if they were to ask you that, like what, when you say you want to do bigger things, what would your answer be? If you don't have one, then this is maybe something that you need to think about before you really try to take action based on it. Because the realization I came to after a while is we're all part of a big team here. And it's not really about what I accomplish or what I do. It's about what we do. Because it takes more than just me to accomplish big things. And honestly, that's a big thing you have to understand, that if you think about like an operating system, like Microsoft Windows, you're talking about thousands of people putting in thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of hours and writing more lines of code than you could possibly imagine combined. Now, none of those people would have been able to do anything like that, had they not been on a team. I'm not saying there isn't the rare prodigy that can do something remarkable, but even they can't accomplish the big things that we have. And that is the whole point, that you're doing this as part of a team. What is good for you, and it's also what's good for the team, and vice versa. You're all working in this together, and we're all in this together. In a way, we're kind of on a boat. And while everybody on that boat should do their job, we may have to fill in, right? Because we don't all want to sink together. And beyond that, we can create something really big, but none of us, or really not even a group of us, will be able to claim it as our own. Now, working in IT, I actually have a bit of a different experience than that. What I'm describing more is when you're working for a large company. Working at ServiceNow as an intern, I solved a few small problems for several different companies. I did some security stuff for some other companies. And that was kind of cool. I did little things for a lot of different organizations. That was kind of interesting. Then when I moved into my full-time job that I have now, it's more of just a development job. And this is where I kind of eventually, after years, started to get this feeling like I really feel like I should be doing bigger things. And I would push, to get bigger things. But, if anybody had asked me, what do you mean? Like, what specifically, what big thing do you want to be on? I don't think I would have had an answer. But the realization I came to after a while, and with help of others, that I am very happy that they were willing to talk to me about these things, is that you're just human. And what you can feel good about is none of these big things out there are actually done by individuals. They're done by groups and teams. And even what I do is a smaller part of a bigger thing. Now, what I do, I actually do have a good amount of influence and control over the applications that I develop. And there have been some, actually several, that I've developed completely on my own, that I'm the only developer and I'm literally the only person that is creating the application. But that application is one little application in one little workplace. So yes, that means, I've written and helped with probably at this point close to 100 applications, depending on what you define as an application. But, those are only small applications that are going to be used very quickly by people that work for one organization, the one I work for. So I do have more impact on the individual application, but I have less impact on the overall organization because what I work on is not actually the final product. It's just there to try to help the people that are making the final product. So really, no matter what you do, unless you want to go work at a startup, which if that's what you want, good luck. Unless you're doing that though, you're going to be a small part of a larger puzzle. And that's okay. I guess that's my whole point, is that that's okay. And if you're in school, realize this. Realize that, you're not going to be expected to write youtube.com. You're going to do one little button on youtube.com. And that'll be what you do over the next 2 months. So, obviously I may be playing that down just a bit, but you're going to be working on fairly small things because there's hundreds of people working on these applications. And that's okay. So I hope this helps somebody out there. Have a good night.